You want to start with your name, kind of affiliation, and what you guys do?
Sure. My name is Robert J. Moore. I'm the CEO and co-founder of RJ Metrics. We're a company that helps online businesses make smarter decisions by using their own data. We offer a hosted product where companies can log into online dashboards that show them information about the health of their business and also deep insights about how to attract customers that are more valuable to them.
Why are you in Philadelphia? Give us the kind of the creation myth.
Sure. So my co-founder and I met actually in New York City, where we were working together at a venture capital firm. And one of the values that working at that firm instilled in us was the merits of bootstrapping a company and really building a business without the assistance of outside capital. So we set out to do exactly that, which was start a business with a couple of bucks that we had in our bank account and really try to grow something meaningful without relying on somebody else's money to do it. When we set out to do that, we quickly realized that New York City was probably not the ideal environment. The costs associated with rent and acquiring talent and things like that were prohibitive. I grew up in the Philadelphia area. My co-founder grew up nearby and went to the University of Pennsylvania, so we both knew the city really well, and we had an affinity for it. And we knew that if we started a company here, we would have the opportunity to have a lot more runway with the capital that we had and really be able to make an impact on a much faster time frame and be a meaningful part of a technology community. So there were a lot of things working in Philly's favor, but they all came together to bring us down here.
So is that a Philadelphia only experience, or if you're talking to someone in another city, in Atlanta and Seattle and Chicago, do you think they can have kind of a similar experience?
Yeah, I bet that our story about Philadelphia is replicated in cities all over the country on a really regular basis. I mean, people think about kind of major tech hubs on the East Coast and the West Coast, but the reality is that there's a ton of opportunity to do really meaningful things in a cost-effective way in pretty much any major metropolitan area that's got a good university system and kind of a good universe of talent to pull from. That's certainly been our experience, and if I had grown up outside of Chicago or outside of Atlanta, I bet we'd be based there, and I think our opportunity to be successful in those cities would be just as large.
So, RJ Metrics, you yourself have had a lot of great success over the past year or so. Maybe give that sense of the investment news, the hiring growth, the customer acquisition stuff. Maybe walk us through a little bit of that and how, if at all, geography played a part of that.
Absolutely. I mean, we in the past year have substantially grown our customer base, our revenue, our headcount here, the square footage of the office that we're in. And I think Philly's played a major role in every one of those components. As I said, we're a company that was historically bootstrapped, but once we were able to show a large number of data points and the ability to do things like put $1 out and get more than $1 back in, it made practical sense to raise outside capital. Philly has actually proven to be an asset in a lot of ways when going to investors, whether they're in Philadelphia or not. And the reason is a number of things. Number one, proprietary access to talent. We have a lot of fantastic universities here, particularly in the engineering disciplines, where we've been able to recruit extremely talented people who, there might be a lot more ferocious competition for in other cities. So we've built a team that I think is world class, and I think that we've done it in a way that has allowed our business to be both cost effective and kind of thinking about the community that we're in and playing a part that helps move it forward. From the customer acquisition standpoint, the beauty of the internet, and I think maybe this might not have been true if you were interviewing me 50 years ago, is that we never meet any of our customers face to face. It just is not part of our business model. We recruit our new customers through online advertising and blog posts and social media channels. We implement them over email and electronic connections, and we deliver our product over the web through the cloud. We could be in Antarctica, and we could be just as effective as a company. And I think that trend is something that's enabling cities that are not necessarily in the center of where a customer base might be to be extremely successful. And you can see that looking across the country and looking at where a lot of major hosted technology businesses have evolved into being really meaningful players in the tech space.
So we touched on investment, university talent, wealth creation from past ventures. There's a few pieces there. Can you kind of maybe walk through if those or others that you think need to exist for any market to be able to reasonably consider themselves a technology hub of any kind? What are some of the pieces that you'd look for if you're, trying to judge if it's even possible?
Yeah, I mean, I think I certainly wouldn't count out the value of some form of ecosystem. So when we started in the Philly area about 5 years ago, it was a lot more kind of a fledgling ecosystem than it is today. I mean, you look at today and there's every single night of the week, there's multiple tech events competing for each other's attention. When we started 5 years ago, there was no Technically Philly blog. There was no, Philly Startup Leaders was really an idea that some people were trying to put together. And what's happened in that 5 years is that the existence of that ecosystem has been instrumental in our ability to succeed and scale and frankly reach people who were interested in startups. You talk to a lot of founders and they're right when they say that the team is really the number one thing that drives a company forward. And being able to build a successful team here of like-minded people has been really critical for our success. We could not have done that without the ecosystem that exists and has evolved in the kind of Philly metro area. Going to events, participating on mailing lists, understanding who's out there who may have a day job at a Fortune 500 company, but on the nights and weekends is really thinking about what it would be like to be at a startup. Those are the people that we hire. And those are the people who are really talented and could work, particularly with developers, pretty much anywhere that they wanted. The reason we're able to bring them here and the reason we're excited about them is because they are interested in entrepreneurship. And when you give people who are interested in entrepreneurship a platform through which they can work in a place that's very entrepreneurial, the nice ripple effect of that is ideally if we have a happy day sometime down the road where there's a successful outcome for RJ Metrics, what we're doing here today is breeding the leaders of the next generation of technology startups. And if you look at cities like Chicago, where Groupon's a great example of a company that had a really successful exit and made a lot of millionaires out of people that were, early participants and then later on directors and VPs at that company, they're starting their own companies today. And that has an explosive effect on the number of companies in the ecosystem and the amount of knowledge about how to build and scale businesses in the startup world. So I hope that Philadelphia can replicate that success. We've seen that with exits with companies like Turntide in the past that have really translated into one successful company having an exit for, compared to Groupon, a minuscule amount, has resulted in a half dozen startups that are, now poised to be even bigger than Turntide ever was in their own lifetimes.
What about you, Robert? The stuff that you think should be part of this narrative of non-traditional technology markets growing, anything that you think I should have asked that I did not?
One thing that I really truly believe is that entrepreneurs who blame a lack of venture capital inside their community on the reason for it not blossoming is kind of a false argument, in my opinion. I think that venture capital money will flow to any place where there are interesting, successful businesses that have good track records and good metrics around their success. There are no shortage of firms in Silicon Valley, in New York City, that are sitting on piles of money that would be so proud to find a proprietary deal in an offbeat second-tier city, as they would call it. That is something that, in some ways, is almost a perk to them. So I think saying, hey, it's really hard to get a meeting with a VC because there aren't any in Philly, I think if there were more great companies in Philly, there would be more capital in Philly. And I think if you look at first-round capital moving their offices here, I think that's great evidence of there being pieces of the underlying ecosystem that are required to really accommodate dedicated sources of capital inside of a metro area. And I think that we are accomplishing that. We're in the early stages of it. I think that there are markets that have become even more mature, but I think as we see more exits here, as we see more interesting businesses, the capital will come. And in the meantime, if companies need to look at outside cities to bring in the dollars they need to operate, fantastic. You're going to bring jobs from another city to create jobs, or you're going to bring capital from another city to create jobs in Philadelphia. That's a really amazing thing.
5 years from now or beyond, how do you know that your efforts or passion or anyone's work now was successful in kind of the ecosystem building, as it were? Well, what's your metric?
Yeah.
As someone who should love analytics more than most, what's kind of the metric for success?
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, in a lot of ways, it's the number of people who are working at startups. We raised $5 million recently, and I think the mayor is going to come by and shake my hand and do a quick visit here because we might create another 30 or 40 jobs out of that. The reality is 30 or 40 jobs is a drop in the bucket. It's a good headline, but when you look at unemployment numbers, it's really pretty meaningless. On a national level and even on the city level. I think the day when the impact of startups in aggregate in a given city is not meaningless anymore, I think that's a day when we've kind of hit a point that's meaningful for what startups mean and how far startups have come in a city.